At the heart of every single carbon reduction journey are carbon reduction projects. This is what it's all about. But how do you choose which ones to do? How do you choose when to do them? And how do you put some structure around that? Let's have a look. I come across plenty of carbon reduction projects, which is fantastic. I mean, it's what I'm about. I'm here to get your company to emit less carbon. That's my raison d'etre. So I see them, and I'm always happy to see them. But sometimes there's a problem. Sometimes people are doing ad hoc projects, and there's no structure to them. There's no framework. There's no sort of like glue to hold them all together into some sort of sensible plan. If you're above 250 staff, if you're a large company, you really should be thinking about science-based targets as a way to pull those together, to give you that framework that I mentioned, to put things into place and to structure it properly. If you're below 250 staff, then what I'm about to tell you is a structure that you can use to think about the projects and sort of rate them and sort of do them in some sort of logical sequence, okay? The first thing you should do is you should have a look at the payback that the project is likely to give you. Now, if you've got a software platform, like Anistic, etc., they will give you, an estimate of the payback. But if you want to put more detail into that, you can, a little bit more time and effort, a bit more research, and you can actually sort of make reasonable estimates on the project payback. If you are a large company doing a large project, then that work itself is sometimes extensive. One of my clients is, just doing a £2 million investment into, a carbon reduction project. And, for them, the amount of work they do, they spend months, probably months planning it and probably months getting it signed off. But they spend months going through it in great detail, looking at the payback they expect from their investment, which is fine. That's the right level of work for the right level of project. But you need to start somewhere, and quick estimates are a great place to sort of get you going and say, well, actually that's better than that, etc., etc. Okay, so make some estimates and then sort of rank them in terms of payback. You can do it in terms of a full life cycle cost assessment, which we in the trade called LCCA. Okay, that's what you need to do for ESOS. So if anybody's doing the ESOS sort of framework, the ESOS legislation in the UK, then you should be doing LCCA, lifetime cost cycle analysis. And that you say, well, we're going to replace the lights, but hey, do you know what? We need to get rid of those lights. And so you look at the disposal cost, you look at the installation cost, then you look at the increased lifetime, etc. It can get relatively complex, and for bigger projects, that's absolutely what you must do. You've got to put the time in there so that you're spending your company's money wisely, okay? Most people, 9 out of 10, you could do that, they tend not to. So the first go-to method is the simple payback, which is how much is it going to cost, what's it going to save per year, and then divide one by the other and you get the number of years of payback. It's called the simple payback period, SPP. And so with the simple payback period, you can get an idea about how quickly these projects pay back. That's one thing you do. Okay, rate them, rank them, give them put them in some sort of order that makes sense to you. The second thing you do is you think about, a graph axis, and the other axis, and I'll describe the graph in a second, is how much it actually costs. Okay, you might even do, if you want, how complex is the project to sort of get off the ground, but cost is a good sort of simple metric. And again, you'd rate these projects in terms of, whether they are cheap or expensive or somewhere in the middle. What you can then do is you can then put a grid together, one of these sort of, like noughts and crosses grids with 9 squares on it, where you say, at the top right-hand corner, these projects have got a great payback and they're cheap to do. Okay? Bottom left-hand corner, these projects are expensive with a low payback. That should then give you sort of this grid, these nine squares, with payback up the top and cost along the bottom, 3 sections in each, giving you 9. Put your projects into those grids, okay, and you can see whether you've got a project here that's going to give great payback for a cheap cost or expensive. You can then use that grid to help schedule your projects, to say, right, we're going to do these straight away, these we're going to do over the next couple of years, and the one, imagine it's got a low payback, with, for example, a high cost, maybe never do that. Why bother? So you can use this grid to sort of schedule the projects with two caveats. First, cross off the projects which are too expensive. If you look at it and go, there's no way on God's earth we're getting signed off for that, just cross it off and say, look, that's ruled out, it's just too expensive, can't afford it. And on the flip side, if you see some projects which make obvious sense to get on with, just do them. If you've got a project that's cheap to do with a relatively good payback, just put it in place. Why not? It's simple, it's quick. Don't overthink those. Okay? So that will give you the grid, and that will give you a structure to do things in. As I say, if you're a bigger company, then really a different structure is probably what you need, and that's the science-based target structures. But for smaller companies up to 250 staff, think about a simple grid, and that will help you sort of frame them. Now, in terms of what level of detail you need to put into your carbon reduction plan, it varies, it really does. Most people put about a paragraph in for each project, okay? And most people will choose, I don't know, maybe sort of 4 or 5 projects is probably the going number at the moment for things that people put into their plans. You should really think about how much the project is going to save, and if you know the start date, having looked at your grid, say, well, we're going to do that then, that then, that then, you can actually start putting the expected savings into your carbon forecast. You're looking at your budget going forward, what you think you're going to emit. You can put these in and start seeing that number coming down. If you've got software, again, that will do it for you. If you haven't got software, then it's a bit of sort of Excel magic that you need to play there and get that in place. But you should be thinking not just, for example, we're going to, I don't know, decarbonize the such and such. You should actually say, and that's going to save so much carbon, and actually make estimates or calculations about the carbon saving, put that into your forward-looking plan, just to make sure that you hit the targets that you've set out in the A of MARTOC, the aims and the targets. Just make sure you're on course with all the projects you're doing to hit those targets. Okay. In terms of projects, there's one gotcha for you, which is if you're sort of looking at a standard called PPN 0621, which is the UK government standard, then you need to be choosing not just a range of projects, but you need to be choosing projects that are going to impact the work you're doing for the government. Okay, so if, for example, you are looking at supplying them some metalwork, say it's, for example, to some external stairs, they'd be looking at projects which save carbon for those particular products. So if you say, for example, we're going to be doing some emergency escape stairs, it's a large amount of metalwork, don't be putting in there things that you're going to put a recycle bin in the office. Of course, it's a good thing to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but what the government are looking for on the PPNs are relevant projects to the contract that you'll be bidding for. Okay, just a little tip there. There you go. So I hope that was useful. If it was, it's all laid out in my book, Net Zero for Business. It's available on Amazon. And if you like it, I'd be delighted if you gave it a good review. It's a new book out, and it's a really practical guide to help you get to net zero. Okay, it does make references to our software, Anistic. Sorry about that, it's just easier these days if you use software to do those sorts of things. So there you go. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you next time.